Okay, this series of lectures has to do with employment documents. It has to do with resumes and letters of application. And in your career, in your working life, resumes and letters of applications may be the most important documents you write, because these are the documents that will afford you entree into the workforce. In a way, we've already talked a little bit about resumes because we've talked about proposals. And resumes and letters of application do for you as an individual what proposals do for your company, do for your team or your group. You wrote a proposal for your formal report, and you wrote it as though you were a team of one. And that's not the way the business world works. Very rarely will you be working on a proposal on your own. You will usually work on proposals in groups, working with other people. So in a way, you're coming off of the proposal project and going into resumes with the same idea in mind. Resumes and letters of application move you into the workforce, and some of the same principles apply for resumes and letters of applications that apply for proposals. They will work on persuasion. They all need to be perfect because these are your representatives, and they say something about the quality of work you will bring to that position if you get it. So the first thing we need to think about is basically, what is a resume? And the definition of a resume is that it is a written communication that clearly demonstrates your ability to produce results in an area of concern to selected employers in a way that motivates them to meet with you. The key phrase here that I want you to focus on is motivates them to meet you. The purpose of a resume is to get you an interview. The resume is not intended to get you a job. The resume is intended to get you an interview. It shows that potential employer that you have certain educational background, you have certain skills, you have certain abilities that the employer needs in order to fulfill that job. They have a position that they need to fill. That position requires certain education, it requires certain experience, and you certainly have that educational background and you have that work experience. You have those skills. Therefore, they will bring you in and they will interview you. Once you are in the interview room and you start talking to them and you start answering questions in a certain way, then they can see your personality. And they can judge just how deep your education goes. They can judge just how real a handle you have on those skills and those abilities. And they can also judge your personality to judge whether or not you'd be a good fit with that company and that corporate culture. It's the interview and the way you get along with people during the interview and the way you present yourself and the way you handle the stressful situation of the interview and the way you handle the stressful questions they're going to ask you. That is what gets you the job. The resume gets you into the interview so that you can impress them with the way you handle yourself, with the way you handle that stressful situation. And it's the interview and the way you present yourself that actually gets the job. Resume doesn't get you the job, but the resume certainly sets you up so that you can then impress them and get the job. The two have to work together. The resume gets the interview gets the job. Without the resume, you don't get the interview. Without the interview, you don't get the job. So you definitely have to have a good resume to get the interview, which then allows you to impress the potential employer who then hires you, hopefully. Now, the appearance of your resume is vital. You may have employers sorting through large numbers of resumes, particularly with the way the economy is right now. An employer could post a job listing and get 100 to 200 resumes for one job listing. And that means that that employer is going through 100 resumes or 200 resumes looking to fill one job posting, one opening. And that employer is going to have to find some way to weed out potential resumes that he doesn't want to actually look at. So the first sort might be based solely on the way the resume looks. They may sort through them based on font. They may sort through them based on whether or not the resume is cramped. Have they tried to crowd too much information into one page? They may sort through them on whether or not there's too much white space, because maybe that says there's not enough information here. Surely this person can't really be experienced enough if there's too much white space on the page. The key is to go for a balance. A lot of resumes are actually submitted online now, so you may never actually print a resume out. You may never actually print a resume out onto paper and have it in hard copy unless you actually go for the interview. If you're applying online, that means that your resume is going directly into a database, and then the employer is receiving it through the database. That means that you need to think about the language that you are using. You need to think about the verbs you are using, and you need to make sure that you're using action verbs. I've got a list of those action verbs here. You have to talk about things like administered, analyzed, built, calculated. You can do a search online for action verbs for resumes, and I will make sure whenever I post your resume assignment that I actually put a list of these action verbs with your resume assignment. But the key is that instead of writing complete sentences, you write a series of sentence fragments, and you start each job duty, or you start each listing of the things you've done with one of these action verbs. So instead of saying, while I was there, I attained, or I assisted, or I assembled, or I maintained, you start out just saying, maintained the database, maintained website, remodeled, repaired, represented, so that you start with just the verb and you leave out the complete sentence. That way, whenever the employer goes to the database and starts searching the database of resumes, they can type in examined, extracted, identified, implemented, and come up with a list of people who have just those skills. And it pulls up just those select resumes.